Over $2 million?
I'm not allowed to say the
It
amount.
was a lot of money, though, wasn't it?
I do not believe it was worth my freedom, sir.
But you did at the time.
I did not, sir,
Okay, why'd you sign the agreement?
because it was, for the lack of a better term, I was compelled to sign the agreement in order to fall in line with the group, sir.
Here's why I think you signed the agreement, and I don't mean to offend you.
It's okay.
I've seen these kind of transactions before. This is going on all over the country.
That is correct.
I think the private equity group came in and offered you and your partners a huge sum of money in the millions. And I think you took it. And I think later you regretted it. And you wanted out of the deal. And I think that's violates the freedom of contract.
What's up, America? Welcome back to Right View Nation, where we see the world through the lens of liberty, truth, and good old-fashioned common sense. I'm your host, and today, folks, we need to talk. Buckle up, because what went down in that Senate hearing, where Senator John Kennedy lit into a doctor over non-compete clauses, is something every freedom-loving American should see. Let me tell you something right off the bat. I love a man who's not afraid to say it how it is. And in this case, that man was Senator Kennedy. He sat there, stared that orthopedic surgeon dead in the eyes, and said what millions of us were thinking. You signed the contract, you took the money, and now you want to cry foul? Let's break this down.
Good afternoon, Chair Warren, Ranking Member Kennedy, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be here, and I thank you for inviting me to discuss my experience with non-compete agreements from a doctor's perspective. My name is Will James Toussaint, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon at the University of Florida as of 2022. And I'd like to state for the record that the opinions expressed herein are my own and do not reflect the positions of UF or UF Health. I was born in Haiti and immigrated to Florida, where I achieved the American dream. I was the first in my family to be accepted to college. I worked on Wall Street after college to pay off my student loans. I was then accepted to medical school, where I graduated among the top of my class, and as a result, I matched at Harvard University's orthopedic surgery residency program and then completed an orthopedic foot and ankle fellowship. In 2014, I joined a private practice group in North Central Florida as their only foot and ankle trained orthopedic surgeon. I was one of only 2 surgeons with this expertise across a dozen mostly rural counties serving over 850,000 people. Over the next few years, my partners and I felt the pressures of decreasing reimbursement coupled with the burdens of pre-approval requirements from insurers and competition from other practices. We felt that an infusion of capital was necessary to remain sustainable. As a result, we entered into a purchase agreement with a private equity company headquartered in California. The deal closed in 2017. Although I cannot disclose the transaction's details, there was indeed a non-compete clause. Per the non-compete clause, I would be restricted from practicing orthopedic surgery within 25 miles of any facility in which the group was currently providing medical services, any facility in which the group had previously provided medical services, any facility in which the group was targeted for expansion within the entire state of Florida, and any facility the group was in discussions with related to a potential acquisition. This non-compete was valid for 2 years, and of course, the group was located in multiple states. One might wonder why we would sign such a deal. The reality is that the nuances of the non-compete were not known until we, the doctors, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in transaction expenses related to the acquisition. We felt backed into a corner and believed that our only choice was to proceed with the transaction in good faith. Unfortunately, within months after closing the deal, the morale of the physicians and the staff declined. Instead of cost savings, the practice's overhead expenses increased significantly due to more layers of administrators, excessive management fees, and millions of dollars of debt expenses. The overhead increased so substantially that some physicians not only did not receive a paycheck, but actually paid to work, despite the physicians taking on all the risks of patient care. All the while, the cost of the patients started to rise, and they complained that their quality of care decreased. Personally, I became disillusioned by management focus on dollars instead of the quality of care. I eventually put in my resignation stating my intent to leave for academic practice at the nearby nonprofit public institution. This decision made sense given that the only other orthopedic foot and ankle surgeon in the entire region was retiring, and I would be able to help educate the next generation of doctors. Despite this, the private equity group filed suit against me. It did not matter to the group to the private equity group that a community of over 850,000 people would not have a specialist surgeon to care for them. It also didn't matter to the private equity group that the university was the only contracted provider of orthopedic care for Medicaid patients in the community, and without me, they would have to travel hours away for care. And finally, it did not matter to the PE group that the state of Florida had already enacted a special statute, Chapter 542, Section 336, stating that if one entity employs all the doctors within a special specialty in the county, that the non-compete is already void. It didn't matter to them. Despite all of this, within days of my leaving the practice, the private equity group threatened legal action to prevent me from entering academic practice. Despite the aforementioned Florida statute negating the non-compete, the private equity goals were clear: to wage a prolonged legal battle in the hopes that I would give up and leave my community before a final judgment was made. After an expensive 4-month dispute, a legal settlement was finally achieved and I was able to join the university. Not surprisingly, many patients from my previous practice told me that they were very frustrated when they called the group asking for me. They said that the private equity group lied to them and stated that I had retired from medicine, which is clearly untrue. Because of my concerns with private equity in healthcare, including their use of non-compete agreements, I joined the Coalition for Patient-Centered Care, a group of healthcare stakeholders who oppose private equity's influence over independent physicians. I have experienced the negative consequences of non-compete agreements have on patients, the physicians, and their communities. And I conclude that these restrictive covenants negatively impact patient access to physicians, limit the quality of care, and increase costs to all parties. Thank you.
Dr. Toussaint, you're an orthopedic surgeon, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Where'd you go to med school?
I went to medical school at NYU, sir.
Okay. And you were, I think you said you were at the top of your class.
Yes, sir.
And then you trained at Harvard.
That is correct.
And then you joined other orthopods in a practice, right?
That is correct.
How many orthopedic surgeons were in your class? Were in your practice, rather?
I don't recall the number of orthopedic surgeons specifically, but there were approximately 25 partners within the
Okay.
group.
And you were a partner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And a private equity company came in and said they wanted to buy you. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you and your partner sold, right?
That is correct.
And they paid you a bunch of money, right?
They paid me some money, sir. That is correct.
Yeah. How much did you walk away with?
I walked away with nothing.
No, when they bought your practice, you were a partner. You were paid, right?
Right at that point, sir, I did not walk away, but I was.
Well, I didn't strike the walk away. How much did you personally gain from the sale to the private equity group?
I'm not allowed to disclose the details of the transaction, sir.
Was it over? Why not?
Because that is part of the transaction's restrictive agreement, sir.
Was it over $1 million?
I'm not allowed to say, sir.
Was it over $2 million?
I'm not allowed to say the amount.
It was a
sir.
lot of money, though, wasn't it?
I do not believe it was worth my freedom, sir.
But you did at the time.
I did not, sir.
Okay. Why'd you sign the agreement?
Because it was, for the lack of a better term, I was compelled to sign the agreement in order to fall in line with the group, sir.
Here's why I think you signed the agreement, and I don't mean to offend you.
It's okay.
I've seen these kind of transactions before. This is going on all over the country.
That is correct.
I think the private equity group came in and offered you and your partners a huge sum of money in the millions, and I think you took it. And I think later you regretted it, and you wanted out of the deal. And I think that's violates the freedom of contract. And I will bet, no offense, doctor, but I will bet that you wouldn't be willing to give back the millions of dollars that you took away from the sale in order to get back your freedom to practice.
Can I respond?
Sure.
If I may respond, thank you for the opportunity to respond to your question, sir. I have to say that, number one, I was not in favor of the sale. That's number one. And then number two, I I have to disagree with your final statement without giving away any details. But I can say in my personal experience that is false, sir.
Okay. You took the money, though, didn't you?
The thing that I disagree with, sir, is whether or not I gave it back.
Yeah, but did you take the money?
I gave it back, sir.
You gave back all the money that the private equity group paid you.
As part of the
Is that your testimony?
as part of the settlement, I have to say that I had to buy out of the non-compete.
Yeah, I don't want to play GameStop, but
Yes, sir.
when the private equity guys came in and said, we want to buy you out, you might have disagreed with your partners, but it sounds like they outvoted you.
That's correct.
You could have left the practice then. You chose not to. You chose to take the money, did you not?
If I chose to leave the practice, sir, I would have had to leave
I understand.
the state.
I get that. But you took the money, did you not?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Doctor, let's suppose that Elon Musk decided to leave Tesla. General Motors hired him away. Said, we'll pay you $50 billion a year because we, General Motors, are sucking wind. And they are. But if we sign you up, we want an employment contract, and we're going to show you all our intellectual property. And we're going to insist that you sign a non-compete agreement. Now, you got General Motors, you got Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest, people in the world. Why should those two not be allowed to negotiate an employment contract, including a non-compete agreement?
As I explained to Ms. Smith, I'm less worried about wage-suppressing effects of non-competes on very high-wage workers. Obviously, Elon Musk would be able to negotiate a non-compete with a new employer. He
Would
has
you
incredible.
have any problem saying that's okay?
There are other options for
Yeah, but would you
GM.
have a problem?
I would have a deep problem with saying that's okay because what we're
You're
talking
just against all non-competes.
because of their effects on the economy, their effects on negative effects on workers, negative effects on consumers, and negative effects on the economy more broadly.
I just don't think you're very objective. I don't think you're a very objective witness. It's been my experience that most of these issues, there are always two sides. And no offense, you're entitled to your opinion. I enjoyed listening to you, but I can tell from your breathless presentation that you just feel passionately about this, and I respect that, but I think you're kind of blinded by your ideology. That's just my point of view. But I thank you for being here. And I went way over. Give Tina more time. Because she stayed within her limits, and I went way over. And I got to go vote.
All right. Thank you. So nearly 30 million people.
So this surgeon, Dr. Rue James Tant, smart guy no doubt, born in Haiti, comes to America, lives the dream, goes to NYU Med, trains at Harvard, starts a successful career. I respect that hustle. That's the American dream. But then he tells this sob story about private equity buying out his practice, enforcing a non-compete clause, and how it supposedly ruined his ability to care for patients. Look, I understand that things didn't go the way he expected. I really do. But folks, let me ask you, since when did being a business partner mean you get to back out of legally binding deals when it doesn't suit you anymore? This man chose to enter into that agreement. He wasn't forced. He says he felt pressured. You know what? Welcome to the real world, pal. Every American who's ever signed a mortgage, taken a loan, or built a business has felt pressure. That doesn't give you the right to turn around and claim victimhood when things get tough. Now let's talk about the moment that had me cheering in my chair, Senator Kennedy stepping in and dropping truth bombs like the patriot he is. He didn't come in with kid gloves. He came in swinging. You were paid, right? Boom. That's the heart of the matter. You can't take the payout, cash the check, and then complain about the terms you agreed to. That's not how America works. Kennedy even said it himself. This is happening across the country. And it is. Private equity firms are making deals with doctors, hospitals, and other professionals all the time. Are some of these deals ideal? Maybe not. But freedom of contract is sacred. That's capitalism. That's how innovation happens. You want to end non-competes? Fine, but do it before you cash in. And when Kennedy asked point blank, "Would you give the money back?" the doctor tap-danced harder than a Broadway performer. "Well, I had to buy out of the non-compete." That's not an answer. That's dodging. You either gave it back or you didn't. And if you didn't, you don't get to complain. Now, I know what the left's gonna say. Non-competes are evil, they hurt workers, they limit freedom. Spare me. You know what else limits freedom? Socialism, bureaucracy, government micromanagement. Non-compete clauses are not evil. They're tools. You know why they exist? To protect business interests. To ensure that someone doesn't get access to confidential operations and then jump ship to a competitor or start their own rival shop next door. It's about fair play in a capitalist society. You want to protect workers? Then protect their right to negotiate. But don't strip businesses of the tools they need to stay afloat, especially small practices trying to compete in a world of big healthcare and woke regulation. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room. This doctor didn't exactly go broke. He got paid. He made a business decision. The non-compete wasn't sprung on him. It was in the deal. Just because he didn't like the outcome doesn't make it unjust. Now here's where I'll surprise you. Is private equity taking over healthcare a concern? Yes, actually. But not for the reasons the left likes to scream about. The problem isn't capitalism. The problem is crony capitalism. It's when private equity groups cozy up with government regulators, get favorable treatment, and choke out competition. That's not free market. That's the swamp at work. And yes, we need to expose that. But let me make one thing clear. The answer to bad business is better business. The answer is more competition, not more government interference. It's transparency in contracts, not Washington bureaucrats deciding who can and can't work where. To all my fellow patriots out there, let this be a lesson. Freedom comes with responsibility. You can't cherry-pick the parts you like. When you sign your name on a contract, you stand by it, win or lose. Dr. Tant may have had noble intentions. Maybe he truly cares about his patients. I'm not saying he doesn't. But the facts are what they are. He made a deal, and when it stopped serving him, he tried to walk it back. That's not courage. That's buyer's remorse. And as for Senator Kennedy, God bless that man. We need more truth-tellers like him in Washington. Folks who don't flinch when it's time to speak the hard truths, and who put principle before popularity. If you believe in capitalism, freedom of contract, and personal responsibility, smash that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to Right View Nation for more content that cuts through the noise and defends America's core values. Until next time, stay bold, stay free, and always keep your right view.